What if everything Blake Lively's lawyers told the judge wasn't true in a case that's already gripped Hollywood and dominated headlines? We've now crossed a line that few thought Blake would ever approach. Courtroom drama has turned into full-blown crisis. Why? Because multiple filings in Blake Lively's ongoing legal battle with Justin Baldoni may have just been exposed as misleading, manipulated, and, according to legal experts, potentially fabricated. We're not talking about rumors. We're talking about official documents filed under oath that now appear to conflict with digital evidence, recovered emails, and damning internal messages. And the judge, he's furious, not confused, not disappointed, furious. He's given Blake's team just days to explain why they omitted critical evidence, edited timelines, and submitted what Justin Baldoni's attorneys now argue was a false version of the truth. The fallout has already begun. Whispers of sanctions, potential criminal referrals, and career-ending backlash are flooding the entertainment and legal industries. Behind the scenes, brand deals are being reevaluated, publicists are panicking. Even A-list friends have gone silent. And if the judge rules that Blake's team lied intentionally or not, it could mark the most devastating collapse of a public image we've seen in years. This isn't just another celebrity scandal. This is a high-stakes legal and moral reckoning playing out in real time. What really happened behind the scenes? Who knew what? And what's at stake for Blake now that the court and the world are demanding answers? Strap in, because the truth is finally catching up. The courtroom was tense, a silence heavy with anticipation hanging over every word. Blake Lively's team had just submitted their latest round of documents in the defamation case brought against her by actor-director Justin Baldoni. Up until that moment, many believed the proceedings were leaning in her favor. Her legal representatives appeared composed, her PR team confident, and her fans fiercely loyal. But all of that changed the moment the judge read aloud the statement that would upend the entire case. This court has been misled, he said with a tone that made even the most seasoned attorneys flinch. The timeline provided by the defense is inconsistent with previously submitted evidence. We need clarity, and we need it now. What followed was pure chaos. Lawyers scrambled, objections were raised, and Justin Baldoni's team moved quickly to file a motion that would go on to become one of the most talked about filings of the year. According to their evidence, Blake Lively's team hadn't just made a clerical error or forgotten a detail. They had deliberately excluded key conversations, redacted context, and misrepresented dates that could have changed the trajectory of the entire case. Behind the scenes, sources close to the matter began leaking details that painted a troubling picture. Several legal documents submitted to the court appeared to be heavily curated, with entire days missing from communication. Logs, critical emails between Blake and her business associates were labeled unavailable, only to be later recovered by Baldoni's digital forensics team. These emails directly contradicted the narrative Lively's lawyers had tried to sell, and that was just the beginning. The judge, known for his no-nonsense attitude and precise courtroom standards, immediately called for a closed session to question both legal teams. What he learned, according to insiders, shocked him and may have triggered an investigation into possible ethical misconduct. The issue wasn't just what had been hidden, it was the motive behind the hiding. Why would Blake Lively and her lawyers suppress evidence that had been requested under discovery orders? Why would they submit altered versions of communications? Why was there a calendar of events that conveniently skipped over key dates related to her alleged defamation of Baldoni? It's not just about a mistake. It's about whether that mistake was intentional. In the days that followed, the legal community began whispering what no one had dared say out loud. Blake Lively's team may have lied to the judge, and if true, this wouldn't just be a PR disaster, it would be a legal catastrophe. As the news broke from the courtroom, the reaction across Hollywood was immediate and intense. Gossip columns, legal insiders, and top-tier entertainment reporters all had one question on their lips: did Blake Lively's team just commit legal suicide? Within hours of the judge's statement, social media was ablaze. The term "Blake lied" began trending across X, formerly Twitter. Instagram comment sections were flooded, and Reddit threads under r pop culture and r folksmoy exploded with speculation. But this wasn't just internet chatter. Prominent celebrities and industry players started weighing in behind closed doors, and the mood was anything but supportive. A well-known entertainment publicist who has worked with multiple A-listers anonymously told a trade outlet, if the allegations are true, and it looks like they are, this could destroy her credibility, not just legally but professionally. You don't walk away from accusations like this unscathed. Studios don't like chaos, and this is chaos. Worse still, several industry insiders revealed that brands affiliated with Lively were watching closely. One luxury fashion brand that had partnered with her on several campaigns reportedly placed a pause on an upcoming collaboration. Another cosmetics label was said to be reevaluating its endorsement relationship, but perhaps the most telling sign of tension came from her own inner circle. For years, Blake Lively and Taylor Swift had maintained one of Hollywood's most high-profile and beloved friendships. But after the courtroom controversy erupted, Swift posted a cryptic quote on her Instagram story: "The truth always reveals itself in the end, no matter how much it's buried." Fans immediately noticed that Lively and Swift were no longer interacting online. Some speculated it was unrelated. Others pointed to deeper fractures behind the scenes, fractures that had apparently been growing ever since Lively's case began consuming headlines. As the fallout widened, even neutral celebrities began quietly withdrawing support. One high-profile actor who had previously worked with Lively commented anonymously, "This is Hollywood. You don't want your name near a courtroom scandal involving dishonesty. That stuff lingers and people remember." Meanwhile, Blake's legal team remained publicly silent. No press conference, no statement, no clarification. But silence can often be more damning than any admission, and in this case, it was interpreted as a signal of guilt. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's camp took a completely different approach. His team released a short but potent public message. "The evidence speaks for itself. We trust the legal system and remain committed to truth." The contrast was stark. Lively's side appeared shaken and disoriented, while Baldoni's team looked measured and confident. At this point, the issue was no longer confined to a legal strategy gone wrong. It had grown into a full-blown reputational crisis, the kind of storm that makes or breaks careers in the entertainment world. And while Blake's silence persisted, the court of public opinion was already making its judgment. One prominent legal analyst summed it up on national television: "There's an old saying, the cover-up is always worse than the crime." If Blake's team misled the judge, there may be no coming back from that, not in court and not in Hollywood. And as the headlines continued to grow louder, one thing became abundantly clear. This was no longer about winning a case, it was about survival. The court reconvened just 2 days after the bombshell exposure of the alleged false filings. And this time the atmosphere was unrecognizable. Gone was the procedural calm. In its place, intensity, anxiety, and the unmistakable tension of a legal turning point. When Judge Ronald McTavish entered the chamber, even veteran reporters noticed the shift in his tone. This wasn't just another hearing, this was a warning. Blake Lively's lawyers, normally composed and strategic, looked visibly rattled. Their demeanor spoke volumes. Their once confident assertions were replaced with nervous qualifiers, vague statements about clerical mistakes, and attempts to shift blame toward digital mismanagement. But the judge wasn't interested in excuses. His message was sharp and clear: this court does not accept partial truths. If there has been any attempt to deceive, obscure, or manipulate this proceeding, the consequences will be significant. He then gave Lively's legal team 7 days. 7 days to provide a comprehensive line-by-line breakdown of every previous court submission, with explanations, justifications, and most importantly, corrected versions of any documentation found to be inaccurate. It wasn't just a request, it was an order. And the subtext behind that order was crystal clear. The court believed something inappropriate had occurred, and now it was up to Lively's side to prove otherwise. The weight of the judge's directive sent shockwaves through legal media. Law blogs and court analysts across the country began writing about the rare move. Some described it as a pre-sanction phase, others interpreted it as the calm before a legal storm. Because if Blake's team failed to satisfy the court, it could trigger a motion for sanctions, an official reprimand, or even referral to the state bar for professional misconduct. It wasn't just the attorneys on the line now. Blake Lively herself, though not the one filing the documents, was the beneficiary of the alleged false claims. If it could be proven that she was aware of what was being submitted, or worse, had approved or directed it, the implications would be explosive. Legal experts broke it down in interviews. If the discrepancies were proven unintentional but negligent, the judge might issue financial penalties or rule adjustments in Baldoni's favor. If the discrepancies were proven intentional, the case could be dismissed entirely with prejudice, meaning Blake would be legally barred from re-filing it. And if there was even a whiff of coordination or deceit involving the client herself, that could lead to an inquiry by the district attorney or attorney general's office. In Hollywood, legal blunders are often handled quietly. Confidential settlements, sealed records, and behind-the-scenes arbitration help stars keep their reputations intact. But this case was different. This was public. This was messy. And worst of all, it was being dissected in real time across every media platform imaginable. And Blake's team, they were now on the clock, working around the clock. Insiders began reporting panic behind the scenes. Paralegals were pulled from other cases. Crisis PR managers were brought in. Entire nights were spent reviewing documents line by line. The mood desperate, because for all the talk of misunderstandings and formatting errors, no one seemed to be able to explain one crucial fact. Why key emails had been deliberately redacted, why conversation logs were curated to skip over controversial quotes, and why entire days from the original event timeline had been scrubbed. As the judge gavelled out the session and issued his 7-day warning, he left the defense with a final statement that rang like a thunderclap. You have one opportunity to explain this to the satisfaction of this court. I suggest you use it wisely. And just like that, the countdown began, not just for a legal filing but for a career, a reputation, and a legacy that now stood at the edge of a cliff. The following week brought with it the most devastating development yet, as Blake Lively's legal team scrambled to meet the judge's deadline. Justin Baldoni's lawyers dropped a legal bombshell that made the entire courtroom gasp. It wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a takedown backed by evidence that was never supposed to see the light of day. Dozens of recovered emails, Slack messages, calendar logs, and internal memos were submitted into the court record. These documents, gathered by Baldoni's forensic digital team, painted a chilling portrait of a coordinated effort to manipulate the narrative, control public perception, and most dangerously withhold material information from the court. At the center of the firestorm was a series of emails between members of Blake's legal PR and management teams. The contents weren't just concerning, they were incriminating. One email dated just days before Blake's original court filing. Read this message thread could seriously damage the claim. Best if it doesn't go in the initial submission. Another even more blatant from Blake's image consultant. We already know the June 18th text looks bad. If we submit the calendar, we need to cut that day. The judge won't ask for it unless it's raised directly. But it was a casual message from Blake herself found in a now-recovered group chat. That stunned even veteran court observers. I don't want that version going in. We've already gone through hell. Just file what works. That quote was interpreted by many as a direct attempt to influence the substance of what her legal team submitted to the judge. While not an outright confession of wrongdoing, the message strongly suggested intentional involvement in shaping the story before the court. Not based on fact but on image and perception, and that's where the line was crossed. The judge had made it clear this wasn't about bad PR, this was about the integrity of the legal process. And with these messages now part of the court record, the narrative had shifted dramatically. From a procedural dispute to a case of possible obstruction. As expected, Blake's legal team responded swiftly but shakily. They insisted the emails were taken out of context. They claimed the messages didn't reflect the final decisions made and that any errors in submissions were due to a complex internal system of coordination, not deception. But the damage was done. COURTTV ran a 3-hour special titled How It All Fell Apart, The Lively Files. CNN and MSNBC featured segments with legal analysts pointing out the gravity of the internal communications. Even 60 Minutes reportedly sent a request to interview Baldoni's attorneys about the digital trail. One former federal prosecutor went viral for his commentary. In my 25 years of trial experience, I've never seen a celebrity team implode this quickly. These kinds of email trails, they're usually what prosecutors use in fraud or obstruction cases. It's textbook, and the public, they were keeping receipts. Fans took screenshots. Content creators made entire timelines based on the leaks. TikTokers did dramatic reenactments of the internal group chat messages. The internet wasn't just reacting, it was documenting. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Lively's world was crumbling. Sources reported that several team members had quietly stepped away from the case. Her longtime PR advisor, who had managed her image since her Gossip Girl days, was reportedly no longer on active contract. Studio executives from projects she was attached to began calling for legal clause reviews because now Blake Lively wasn't just the actress in a legal dispute, she was a potential liability. And as the judge reviewed the latest filing, complete with timelines, digital trails, and internal contradictions, one word hung over the entire proceeding like a dark cloud: accountability. As the court's deadline struck, the world held its breath. Blake Lively's legal team submitted their final revisions just minutes before the cutoff, accompanied by a supplemental declaration claiming they had no intention to mislead the court and that all discrepancies were due to overlapping communication structures within their internal teams. But at that point, few believed the spin. The damage wasn't just legal, it was personal, professional, and public. For Blake Lively, once seen as the golden girl of Hollywood, the courtroom controversy had ripped the veil off a carefully cultivated image. It was no longer about fashion campaigns or fairy tale romances. This case exposed something far more raw: how power, influence, and fear can collide and crumble. When the truth fights its way to the surface, the judge now holds the final call. He can accept the clarifications and allow the trial to continue. or he can determine that Blake Lively's team crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. If he chooses the latter, the consequences will echo beyond the courtroom. A case dismissal would effectively admit that the process has been too tainted to continue. Sanctions against her attorneys could follow. A criminal inquiry isn't out of the question. And for Blake, the consequences may be even more devastating. Hollywood is a town that remembers everything. And while it may forgive a bad movie or a PR misstep, lying to a judge, that's a stigma that sticks. Already, studios are rumored to be reviewing clauses in Blake's contracts. Endorsement deals that once relied on her trustworthy persona are being quietly reevaluated. Brands hate instability, and the fallout from this courtroom scandal has been anything but contained. What remains now is silence and a waiting game. Will the judge move to punish those involved? Will new evidence emerge linking the altered filings to decisions made directly by Blake herself, or will a quiet settlement appear in the night, sweeping this all under the rug in exchange for dropped claims? One thing is certain: this story is far from over. Blake Lively came into this legal battle expecting to defend her reputation, but in trying to do so, she may have damaged it even more than her opponents ever could. And as the headlines grow sharper and the evidence grows heavier, the legacy she worked so hard to build now teeters on the edge of collapse. Because in court, in public, and in history, the truth doesn't go away, it waits. And when it finally emerges, it doesn't just speak, it roars.